We're good, Your Worship.
Thank you, Carson. I'd like to call to order the Township of North Huron's council meeting for August 20th. July 20th. Confirmation of the agenda of the Council Township of North Huron. Accept the agenda for July 20th, 2020 council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? Paul, seconder.
Chris
seconds. Carson, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron accept the agenda for the July 20th, 2020 council meeting as presented. So Deputy Reeve-Syke?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum? Councillor Palmer?
yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey?
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Not hearing anyone, will move forward. Public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to speak to any subject on the agenda tonight, and they have a limit of 2 minutes per person. So if there's anyone out there, if Carson sees of anyone, we'll ask them to step forward now. Not hearing anybody, we're going to continue on. Consent agenda that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 5.1.1. And further, the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.5 for information. Do I have a mover?
Rick.
Anita will move.
Rick, and I have Kevin seconding. Sorry, Anita. And I have Kevin, I'll get you next time around. Okay, is there anybody who'd like to pull anything from the agenda before we call the roll call? Have a conversation about anything on there? I'm going to start with Chris, then go to Kevin.
Yeah, Reeve Bailey. I wanted to pull 531. That's the Huron Federation of Agriculture letter, and I was kind of disturbed by some of its content because it brought out some irregularities from your meeting, Reeve, that you had to vote on, and this is regarding the. I'm not asking for anything, okay? Just make sure you realize that. I just want to bring something up.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the 25% tax ratio for farmland. And county staff was giving county councilors information on things. And according to this letter, they back-checked some things and they found that there were irregularities, and it's sad. I was disturbed by that because when else has it happened? Like for us in our meetings, we rely on our staff to give us correct information, and we all feel that we get it, no issues. But I want our county councilors to feel the same way. So this was just a bother, okay? And Reeve Bailey, this was an agricultural issue. Anytime you feel that you need more information, please talk to one of us. We're thinking, okay?
Chris, I appreciate that. As you know, I have reached out to you and Anita in times gone by, and if I missed on this one, I do apologize. But yes, I am quite grateful that I'm able to reach out to both of you to get a better understanding of the agriculture industry. Because as you know, I was at the other end of that industry, so I appreciate that. Kevin, you are next.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I would like to pull out 522. It's in the fire activity report. Marty might be able to answer this question for me. Just curious to why there was a change in the command structure in the balance by creating a new position and not reinstating someone into the deputy chief's position in Blythe and creating a station chief.
Yeah, so we didn't create a new position. We always had the two, they were called assistant deputy chiefs. So we had the two deputy chiefs, one in each station. And then we had the two assistant deputy chiefs under them. So when Matt retired, we felt we could go with one deputy chief, and then we still have the two station chiefs, they're called now.
Doesn't that create an imbalance in command between two stations?
No, they still can go to their station chief for each station. So my go-to is Chad. And then the station chiefs go to him.
Okay.
So I don't think it creates an imbalance of between each station, because they still have somebody to report to.
Okay. Well, that's your opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Marty. Anybody else just speak up? I don't have all of the, I can't see everybody on the screen tonight.
Reed Bailey.
Yes, go ahead, Trevor.
I just wanted to make a comment on the minutes. Last meeting we had asked about the masks, the mandatory masks, how that was a request from other municipalities to have the minister or the Huron County medical officer declare the use of masks in the county of Huron and Perth, and we had asked to go back to the BIAs and the businesses to give information on those. Obviously, there is no requirement to do that anymore. The medical officer of health has enforced that with the bylaw that came into effect on Friday. So I don't think we need to do any information as it relates to that. Any information that's coming down the pipe from here in Perth health units is going to provide enough information to businesses and stuff. So I just wanted to pass on that, just because I didn't want, obviously, BIAs and stuff to be asking for suggestions when there really is a mandatory request for masks anyways now in that law.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Trevor. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, concerns? Not hearing any. I'm going to hand it over to Carson for roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent item 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.5 for information. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor Falconer. Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Henderson.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you again. We have no public meetings, hearings, or delegations tonight. We're going to roll along tonight. Report 7.1, Clerk's Department. And this will be the 2020-07 Planning Act timeframes. Updates to response to COVID-19. I'm going to ask for a mover for that. Anita is first. Seconder. Rick seconds. Dwayne, did you want to speak? Or sorry, Carson, did you want to speak to that?
Through Your Worship, that'll be Monica speaking to that one.
I was close.
Thank you, Reeve. Good evening, everybody. I'm really here just in case council has any questions. This letter summarizes where we're at with the Planning Act direction under COVID-19. In our report, we talk about some of the challenges that we face with COVID-19, trying to run public consultation and other more complex planning files, but we have some suggestions in the report of how that can be done. Basically, the bottom line is that we're going to try to move ahead with everything we can. It just may be that some planning matters take longer to process than usual. So I'm available if council has any questions.
Anybody like to ask Monica any questions on that one? Not hearing anybody. I'm going to hand it over to Carson again for roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report titled Planning Act Timeframes Updates in Response to COVID-19 presented by Monica Walker Bolton at the July 20th, 2020 regular council meeting for information. So Councillor Hepper,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum, Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very kindly. We're going to go to Finance Department 7.2. 7.2.1 is the 2018 June year to date. Could I get a mover for that? Was that your hand, Paul? Paul moves. Seconder? Seconder, please.
Reeve Bailey will Reeve Saipo second.
Thank you kindly. Okay, I'm going to ask for Donna to speak to that if she'd like.
Yes, thank you, Reeve Bailey. So as per this report, we are underspent significantly on capital at this point, but that's not actually that unusual for this time of year. We passed our budget in April, so as we get ramping up to get our projects done, for other points in the year, projects are usually underway at this time. But as you know, we did present that status report, and some of our capital projects were deferred until the pandemic had subsided. So some had been deferred and some are going ahead now. So I've noted that in the notes section on the report. For example, one of the ones that's moved forward till next year was the SCADA investigation for the water. So those funds, council passed a motion to reallocate. So that project won't be going ahead, and those funds were already approved to go forward to the projects that Sean reported on. So also right now we're really ramping up. We're getting ready for reopening. As we've said, we've been in the town hall this week. Val's ramping up for reopening. With the stage 3, Vicky's also getting ready to reopen some of her facilities. So July and August, the rest of August in particular, are really going to, have some telling times for us how we've made out revenue-wise on those projects. So we're certainly going to be monitoring for the next little while as the reopening goes ahead. We're also monitoring the COVID expenses, and again, I expect those to ramp up significantly as the cleaning and disinfecting requirements kick in as per any of the facilities that are opened up. And as I said, from I'm looking at it, every couple of weeks as much as I possibly can, and the department heads are as well. So they'll be monitoring certainly as we move forward. But all in all, things are not looking that bad. Where we have reduced expense, then of course we have reduced revenue for those areas or cost centers that do have offsetting revenue. So as I said, I've noted where some of the programs are reopening, and councils had various reports brought to them as that the day camps weren't going to open up at all this year. So council was informed of that. So we just want to keep moving ahead and having the township reopen as well as safely as possible, and in conjunction with council keeping up to date on all of that. So as I said, for right now, it's still too early to tell how big of an effect COVID is going to have on us, but I'm not alarmed at this very minute, that's for sure. So is there any questions?
Thank you, Donna. Anybody got any questions for Donna? Easy night, Donna. Carson, I'm going to hand it over to you for roll call then.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the June 2020 year-to-date report from the Director of Finance dated July 20th, 2020 for information purposes. So Councillor Van Hittersum? Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Recreation Community Services, there's no reports tonight. A Public Works Facility, we have 7.4.1, and that's a 2020-18 request to assign and sublet airport hangar. Could I have a mover for that, please? I have Paul. Do I have a seconder? Someone like to second that? Just speak up because again, okay, Rick seconds it. Thank you. Mover and seconder, and I'm going to have Sean, I believe, did you want to talk to that one? Or is that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll take that. So as council's probably already aware, there's currently 3 privately owned hangars that are out at the airport. 2 of the hangars are owned and occupied by Apex Helicopters. The 3rd hangar, the one closest to the entrance road, is actually owned by Donald and Diane Thompson. All 3 of these hangars are privately owned, but they sit on municipal property. So the land that the hangars sit on is leased from us. The township has entered into a lease agreement with Donald and Diane Thompson for the lease of those lands back in 2008. It's a 20-year lease, so it's in force and effect until June 21st, 2028. Now they've come to us and they want to assign the lease of the out of the ownership of the hangar. So we were approached with a letter of request to assign that lease over to Bart Cameron. The way the lease reads, they can assign the lease, but only with the approval of council. So that's why this is in front of you. Now, this may sound terribly familiar. We talked about this back in October of 2019. Another party was looking at leasing it, and we went through this process. That deal didn't end up going through. So Donald and Diane were left with the hangar. This time when the request came through, we made sure that the request was actually signed by both parties so that we have a degree of confidence that we're not tying council up for no reason. And as I mentioned, it's the one that's closest to the entrance gate. The only other things of any relevance, I suppose, the hangar in question represents a total lease revenue of $922.83. That was 2019 number. In addition, the hangar generates approximately $770 per year in municipal tax, which we collect and then remit over to Morris Turnbury because, of course, the airport's on Morris Turnbury land. And I think that's really all that I have to speak to with regard to this tonight.
Thank you, Sean. Before I open it up to the floor, I want to comment on the fact that, and actually I'll get Sean maybe to speak to the fact that these hangars are, they're on leased land by the town. And there has been an option to buy the hangar out should we decide to sell the land or do something else with the land. So Sean, could you speak to how that works and what it would cost us? And this is, again, is not part of this deal. This is something that's been around since the airport began. So I think my council needs a better understanding of how we get out of that lease when we go to change the airport structure.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Caught me a little off guard here, but there is some very clearly outlined processes in the lease. And as you rightly mentioned, there's options including purchasing of the hangar at market value. There's also an option to relocate the hangar should the owner want to move it. So there are mechanisms in place. There's also dispute resolution mechanisms in the lease. So it can be broken through processes, and there's definitely costs associated, with either purchase or relocation of these hangars should the township want that to take place. But And those are all outlined in the lease agreement.
Thank you. And the other thing I'd just like to bring out before I open it up, just so everybody has a clear understanding, because this is one of the ones that gets a little confusing for the constituents of North Huron and for the constituents of Morris Turnbury. North Huron owns the airport, the hangars, the strip. We pay for all of that. It is sitting in Morris Turnbury on Morris Turnbury land. So any taxes that we collect go straight to Morris Turnbury. So North Huron again is paying for all the upkeep, all costs involved, and we're not collecting a cent of taxes. It was never started out to be that way, but that's the way it ended up. But I want to be very clear on that because people keep saying to me, well, why don't you do something with the airport, et cetera, et cetera. It's simply because we're not the municipality that has the say in that. And that's why we don't. Now I'm going to open up the floor. And Paul, you were first.
Yes, through you, Reeve. Sean, on your page 8, number 19, it says about the grass cutting and snow plowing. I take it we aren't going to have to run the plow down there, right? Since there's a plane there.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. You're referring to the maintenance requirements.
Yes.
Yes, we still have to, and even this past winter when we had the airport tammed, we didn't plow the runway itself or do any maintenance on the runway itself, but we were still to do some to keep the road and all the accesses open.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, with that, but I mean, like, because there's going to be a plane in there, we don't have to worry about the tarmac, right? We don't have to worry about that at all through the winter.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. So no, the fact that there is or isn't aircraft in the hangar doesn't force action on the part of council. If you choose to no-tam your runway for the winter, that's entirely your prerogative.
Thank you.
Speak up. Not hearing any. Go ahead.
The lease, is it till 2028 or is it a new lease for 20 years?
Through you, Your Worship, they assume the existing lease, so it goes to June of 2028.
Thank you.
Kevin, you had your hand up? No? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, not hearing anything. Carson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Public Works dated July 20th, 2020 regarding a request by Donald and Diane Thompson to assign and sublet their hangar lease to Bart Cameron for information. And further, that Council authorized the assignment of the lease to Bart Cameron pursuant to Article 20 of the lease agreement between the Township of North Huron and Donald and Diane Thompson. So Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight? Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Carson. 7.4.2, a municipal development and servicing guideline for July. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin moving. Do I have a seconder?
Aye.
Okay, Trevor Sipes, the Deputy Reeve moves second. I'm going to open this up to, I believe this would be you again, Sean?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So I've been looking forward to this, to getting this one wrapped up. As council will, well, actually, sorry, this predates this council, I believe. The existing municipal development and servicing guideline was adopted in July 9th of 2018. The report erroneously mentions 2020. So this was brought into effect and in 2018. The guidelines were established and have been strictly adhered to since their adoption. They have proved very useful with development that has taken place within the municipality. And And this is something I know that we've had a lot of discussion about in the last couple of years. These guidelines were established to make sure that all development within the township is done in a consistent fashion so that 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, everything that we've been doing is set with as much reliability and consistency as possible. So the document or the standard that was in front of council, we opened it up, of course, from time to time to make sure that everything's relevant and current. And it did have one area that we found was lacking, particularly when we worked with Gary Rutledge on his development, and that was under the street lighting. So if I may, I'll very quickly go through the areas that were amended or upgraded in this. So one of the things in discussion with BM Ross that we did is we removed the mandatory private drain requirement from the standard. And the reason we did that is the standard basically said thou shalt hook everything to the storm system. And sometimes that's not necessarily advantageous. So by removing that, we allow overland flow where it's deemed appropriate to do so. And in doing that, we take a lot of pressure off of our underground infrastructure. So in discussion with BM Ross, we thought that it was prudent to do that. The other thing we did, this was a simple housekeeping exercise. The Ministry of the Environment, as everybody knows, changed its name again, as it does every few years. So all the references to MOEE were changed to MECP. So again, just housekeeping. Like I said, one of the big ones, the big one for me was that we really clarified minimum standards for street lighting. And we did that by doing two things. We require an illumination study. So putting a development in, we want you to do the study to show us where your illumination levels are. And those illumination levels must meet the RP8 standard. That way you don't end up having dark spots on sidewalks, dark spots on intersections or streets. So I thought that was a really important one. We did require consistency with the existing LED streetlights that we have so that we are not stuck holding 8 or 10 different styles of light. So it really tightened it up quite nicely from my perspective anyways. One thing, we do learn lessons as we go along, and the one thing that we've changed in the standard was before you were allowed to either sod or seed the boulevards upon completion. Depending on time of year, type of seed, all of that sort of thing, it sometimes doesn't work the way we envision it. So that's been revised to require sod only. That way we know that the grass in the boulevards is going to be established properly post a pin. And then the final thing is just a nitpicky thing from my perspective, but the previous document was referred to as a guideline. So in review, we thought it would be prudent to perhaps change the title to standard. And I say that only because a guideline may imply that there's some room for, movement either way. This is a standard. If there's relief that's required, the developer has to come before council and request that relief. So I thought it was just stronger language to kind of underpin and enforce or reinforce the idea that this isn't a rough suggestion. It's a requirement for development in North Huron. And really those only changes, as was mentioned earlier in a discussion. Moving forward, we're recommending that the changes will have the revision date on them. So these would be, if approved, this would be the municipal development servicing standards for North Huron, July 2020 version. And that's really all I had, unless there's some questions.
Thank you, Sean. I'm going to open it up to the council. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Sean?
Yeah, Reeve Bailey.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Reeve, to Sean. I'm a little concerned about the private drains. What's a landowner going to do if they've got a wet spot in their lawn, for instance? Yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's just mess. Whereas before, perhaps they could hook up and then it works better. Like we ran into that. when we built our house.
Through you, Your Worship, this is something that would be captured on at the site plan review stage. You know, if it looks like drainage is appropriate, there's appropriate slopes, there's a receptor, a place for the water to go, then we would have no problem. But what we're doing is saying if there is an opportunity to allow, you know, the overland flow, we would not detract from it. That being said, it all depends on that, on the front end work. That site plan and the drainage has to be approved.
Yeah. Okay, and the other one was the sod. Now you mentioned boulevard. I'm not reading it here. Just green spaces. So I was taking it as the home lawn. So it's not being touched. You can still seed your home lawn.
I believe the intent here was the municipal green spaces.
Okay. Okay.
Paul, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Reeve. For Sean, on 9.2 on page 28, there is the boulevards. It's about you said that you'll be planting a tree per lot, right?
Yes, I saw that. Yes.
And that's on the town property. I'm just curious. In the town here, I've had the odd person saying to me that they can't plant a tree on town property. It has to be out so far from the curb. Is that not sort of a too standard thing, or am I wrong in that? Can people plant within that town property distance?
Let's see where it is here. Under certain circumstances, we might allow it. It would really depend on where the infrastructure is underneath. You know, because one of the things we have caught is, you know, we've had some poorly placed trees and they end up generating expense and liability down the road.
Yeah, understand. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Miss Bailey?
Sean? Yep, go ahead, Anita.
Why is it so important to have the sod in there? I thought people are looking way more and more to have low maintenance areas and plant wildflowers or flowers for the bees or something like that. Why would you want sod? And it's very expensive.
The purpose here was so that it would be quickly established. And again, we're dealing with the urban settings here as well. So obviously, this is dealing with the boulevards and areas that are actually covered under our clean yards bylaw. So you wouldn't want to be into a situation where you would encourage wild growth, because then it ends up having to be dealt with on another front. So this is for the in-town rural development, or sorry, urban development. Yeah.
Just to follow up with what Anita said, I think I'm just wondering. So are you suggesting that they have to put grass down? They just couldn't put down roses?
Well, I'm talking about the boulevards here too. I think the standard is talking about our municipal road allowance areas.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Private. No, we're not telling people. You know, they may want to use as Councillor Van Hittersum mentions, they may want to use some very aesthetically pleasing, creative approach to yard growth. I kind of pounced on the taller growth, which would be discouraged, but you know, they could use a low water requiring type of a setup. That's their property, their prerogative. But for the boulevards themselves, the municipal portion, we want sod as opposed to grass or seed.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Sean? Not hearing any. I'm going to hand it over to Carson again, 7.4.2, because I have movers.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the Director of Public Works dated July 20th, 2020 regarding municipal development and servicing standards for information, and further, municipal development and servicing standards July 2020 be adopted as the minimum standard for new development within the Township of North Huron. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Syke? Counselor Falconer,
Yes.
Counselor Hepper,
Yes.
Counselor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Counselor Palmer, and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you kindly. 7.5, Fire Department, we have no reports. 7.6, Building Departments, we have no reports. 7.7, Childcare Departments, we have no reports. That's all going to change when we all go back to work, right, guys? Anyway, CAO, we have no reports. Correspondence, the Wingham Ward, the Police Services Board, OPP Detachment Commander report. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that? And then Trevor would probably like to speak to that one.
Oh.
Paul's gonna move it.
Rick.
Rick's gonna second it. Trevor, did you want to speak to that one? Trev?
Thanks, I forgot to unmute. Yes, thanks, Reeve Bailey. There isn't really obviously much to communicate. Obviously, because as you can see from the report, there was obviously a lower calls for service in the month of June, multiply because obviously probably COVID-19 was most people were stuck in their residences and not able to go anywhere. So really at the end of the day, most of that stuff would be dealt with that as compared to 2019. Police Services Board obviously has not yet reinitialized meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the discussion that more the declaration of emergency needs to be lifted, as well as council needs to give their blessing for that. And we haven't, there hasn't been much need at this particular point. There only has been some discussions with only some questions back to myself as chair as it relates to the OPP storefronts and that possible request of the satellite offices being closed. So that is, me and Carson are working through that with getting the legislation and making sure that we're going to meet appropriately in August, hopefully to meet our number of meetings that we need to over the next before the end of the year. But other than that, there really hasn't been a whole lot of obviously discussion between the Police Services Board and the detachment commanders. So if there's any questions related to the report, I would be more than happy to try to answer them, or send a message off to the detachment commander for some clarification if need be.
Thank you, Trevor. Is there anyone has any questions for Trevor on the police report? Not seeing or hearing any. I believe I have a movers for that. So Carson, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the OPP Detachment Commander Report, Wingham Ward, for the month of June for information purposes. This will be a recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yes.
Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer. Councillor Van Hittersum. Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you kindly. Now we're going to go to council report, the Reeves activity report. As we're all aware, we're starting to open up now. I'd like just to say that the municipal buildings are opening up and we're bringing a lot of employees back to work. We're doing it in a safe, responsible manner. And it's just good to have the old gang back. The Economic Development Recovery Team is moving forward on a few items. Some of them may come before council. We have some ideas brewing, but we'll know a little more this week. So we'll touch on that another time. I had the absolute pleasure this week of helping Dave Sparling and Rick McBurney and Sean, and I'm just going to go blank on Sean's last name. Rick, help me out with this. The assistant BIA president there. we opened up live. What Dave wanted to do is we got a wagon full of coffee and tea, and we went into every store that was open and thanked them for opening up and seeing how things were going. I want to tell my council and staff that many times I heard how happy the storefront owners were with our council and how they appreciate how we move forward, even if it's things like and important things like putting the flower baskets on the main street. It's the most pleasant morning I've had since I don't know when. As you know, we've taken on quite a battle as a council, a lot of battles as a council, and we seem to be behind the 8 ball quite a bit, and things are frustrating. But I want my council and my staff to understand that Goliath was the most pleasant day I've had in a long time. And it was just great to hear how much they appreciate the work of this council and this staff and what we're doing for them and moving forward. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's just about it for me for the Reeves report. 9.2 council member reports, verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards. Anybody sitting on a board would like to talk about anything? Kevin? Go ahead, Kev.
Yes, as a representative for Blythe BIA, council representative of Blythe BIA. I was a little disappointed with the report coming back from Huron County as to the status of helping us solve a pedestrian problem at the south end of town there at 4 and 25, and not being very high on their list of things to do. That it may be several years before they even consider looking at our problem of bringing people into our town. I was just curious to ask all the rest representatives on council here as to as why we couldn't do our part and at least finish the project on our property to the corner. That would at least alleviate some of the walking concerns, and it would show that we were at least doing what we could. I just want to put that out. If anyone has anything to say about it, I'd love to hear about it.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to start. That roundabout is far from over. I know the report. I've read the report, but staff is still moving forward on some information that I have provided to them about the situation out there. I understand the county is a big county and they have a lot to do, but I feel that is a very hazardous corner, very difficult to see it. I know because of my line of work, I think I go through there about when I'm working 100 times a week. So be assured that I have not dropped the ball on that one. I've got a bit of a setback again. It just seems to be roadblocks all the time, but we're working towards that. Having said that, we'll maybe open it up to council, or maybe Sean, did you want to speak to that? Was there any anything in the wings that we were going to do pavement work? Because I believe that's county, and of course, then you got to get permission from the county to even do anything. Sean, do you want to touch on that a bit? And I don't want to put you in a corner because you were not expecting it.
No, happy to speak to it, Your Worship. So we did have a meeting. Dwayne and myself met with representatives from County Public Works this past about a week ago now. One of the reasons, or the primary reason for the meeting, was to discuss that corner, understanding that we have recognized that there are concerns surrounding pedestrian traffic. The big thing was we didn't want to go and start because we have a couple of ideas. There's things that we think we could do or that the council could consider coming up, but you certainly don't want to be in a position where you start tearing up infrastructure, putting things in place, only to have another entity come along a year later and rip it up. So we're trying to make sure that this is a coordinated effort. One thing our CAO stressed was he understands that there's a lot of stakeholders here. So we've asked that the county move forward with setting future meetings to discuss this and having all holders at the table so we can maybe have a more fulsome conversation about it. But this was first of many steps, I think. I hope that answers, and maybe Dwayne has something he'd like to add to that as well.
Bailey?
Go ahead, Trevor.
So I just wanted to reiterate so the council, the previous council, when developing regional cross-border services agreement or policy in this sense, it was a policy which was meant to be a policy cross-border, and didn't matter whether it was Morris Turnberry, Central Huron, or whatever. When previous council discussed the cross-border services policy with Central Huron, this was during the same time as Cowbell was being developed. And they needed water and suppression and a whole bunch of other things. There was discussion about soft services, and there was discussion about, we are, in order to traffic out to those properties, North Huron is going to have to pay for infrastructure in sidewalks and those types of things. And we may be looking for Central Huron to support us in doing that. We supported you in developing water and sewer for your property. You should return the favor and help us with infrastructure on getting residents from our town, our part of our North municipality, out to those infrastructures and back safely. Lots of discussion was had. Nothing was solidified at that time. In the meantime, where we talk about, that's the discussion with the stakeholders that's got to come back full circle as to what we're going to be doing in order to support that. The BIA has made it very clear that they would like that in their program to get sidewalks out there. I think, as council, we accept that. We agree that we want them to be able to go out there. But we also, I think we also agree that Central Huron has a stake in it. And I think when we do that and we bring them all to the table, we can all have this discussion about what stakeholders. I honestly believe we can do something without disrupting, whether it be a roundabout or not. The municipality can do something to get something out there safely in the time being, because honestly based on the information that we've been getting from the county, I honestly, unless a miracle happens, Reed Bailey and the rest of council, I don't see a roundabout coming in that area anytime soon, at least not in this council term anyways. So we need to be able to do stuff that we can with the stakeholders, and I agree with Dwayne and the rest of the group and staff, and let's bring everybody to the table to understand whose responsibilities are what, and how can we better service the whole municipality, because there's no borders here. We're trying to help each other out in getting people to and from those locations safely without instances.
Thank you, Trevor. I'm gonna follow up with Trevor's comments, Kevin. I'd like you to put a proposal before the BIAs that they send us a letter to council stating that they would like the sidewalk out there so that we can present this to the county, and then we can present it to Central Huron at the same time. So I'd like a letter of support from the BIA if possible. Okay.
Reed Bailey, wouldn't that be just the report that they already sent us? BIA sent us a report about sidewalk traffic in Goliath.
Yeah.
And that's in there.
So I've been around the streets, but I want to focus this right on that sidewalk that's so important to Blythe. I want to focus this and this only with the county. The county couldn't care what we're doing on Disley Street. I've had the trips around Blythe, and it's been pointed out to me where we need to take care of things. So I would like a little more focus on that, unless I missed something here. I just want the Blythe BIA would like a sidewalk from the edge of Blythe to the Cowbell and the Tim Hortons for pedestrian use. Simple as that. Okay. You don't have to, but the more lead I got in my pencil, the farther it's gonna write. Okay. Anybody else? Not hearing of any?
Sorry, Reeve.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Chris.
Councillor Palmer.
Yep.
I'd like to paint a picture for everybody, and don't worry, I'm not going to be pointing fingers or anything. It's just I want everyone to understand the loss to agriculture when Green's Meat Market burned. They serviced farmers in our township and around for almost 50 years, and customers from all around, because they really trusted their meat and enjoyed the freshness of it. They had different reasons. And this was one of their best years, actually, even with COVID. It just worked out well for them. You know, there was a equivalent of something like 80 carcasses just in the process, in the system, you know, when this hit. So it's well used. County wants them going again. You know, because we're an agricultural county, so, and they're the only one in the county, the only one, and their customers do, and of course there's something like 22 people involved that work there. So all I'm saying is that for everyone's sake, I'm really hoping that they rebuild, that they're able to, and move on. That's what so many people are hoping for.
Yes, I would agree with that, Chris. We would all like Greens to rebuild. This is not the first tragedy they've seen in their history as a cut and wrap factory, but we'd all like to see them rebuild. And it's unfortunate that Morris Turnberry's walked away from the table in our talks right now, but we'll adjust that another time because that is in Morris Turnberry. It is a Morris Turnberry taxpayer, and it's up to Morris Turnberry to help them out. We're paid by the taxpayers of North Huron. Okay, moving forward. Anyone else? Not hearing of any. That's it for council member reports. And I believe that would take in comments by members. Or is there any comments by members? Not hearing any. Bylaws, we have no bylaws. Notice of motion, we have no notice of motion. Does anybody have a notice of motion? Not seeing or hearing of any. Bylaws, bylaw number 46-2020. Do I have a mover?
I'll make that one.
Kevin and Rick. I'm going to hand it over to you, Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that bylaw number 46/2020, being a bylaw to provide for interim tax levies, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. So Councillor Falconer? Councillor Hepper?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson? Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Syke?
Yeah.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, August 10th, 2020. Electronic participation is to be determined. The next North Huron Economic Development and Recovery Committee meeting will be held on Monday, July 27th, 2020 at 8 a.m. through electronic participation, unless notified otherwise. Wingham BIA and Blythe BIA meetings will continue to be held through electronic participation during the declared state of emergency. All other committee and board meetings remain suspended until further notice. Number 13, other business. Don't believe there's any. Number 14, there is no closed session tonight. Number 15 is the confirmatory bylaw. Do I have a mover?
Chris?
Chris, do I have a seconder? I have Anita. Carson, your turn.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that bylaw number 47/2020, being a bylaw of the Township of North Huron to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters by the Council of the Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw books. So Councillor Hepper?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson?
Yes.
Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight. Falconer
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Adjournment. The Council of Township of North Huron agreed that there be no further business before council. The meeting is hereby adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Do I have a mover?
Paul.
Do I have a seconder?
Kevin?
I then hand it over to Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron agree that there being no further business before council, the meeting be hereby adjourned at 6:56 p.m. So Councillor Van Hitterson, Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight, Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So the motion to adjourn carries 7-0.
Stay safe, everyone. We will talk another time.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.